Hello, everyone. I'm Alyse Nelson. I'm president and CEO of Vital Voices. Thrilled to be here with all of you and with so many good friends as I look out. And obviously today talking about another critical issue. As Secretary Clinton said in her opening remarks, rapidly emerging innovations in technology offer both great opportunity, but also great challenge. We have seen a rise of digital dictatorship, disinformation, and online abuse. It's no wonder it's targeting women because it is a very effective tactic to silence them, particularly when it comes to women political leaders, and really strip women of our power. The panelists today are a phenomenal group of experts in this area, coming from different perspectives and different sectors. Let me introduce them. So first, to my right, Rachel Vogelstein. She's Deputy Director and Special Assistant to the President at the White House Gender Policy Council. She's also Special Advisor on Gender at the White House National Security Council. She's author and has served as an advisor to Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton on women's issues for more than a decade. I was reading that and thinking maybe 2 or 3, but wonderful to have you here. Next to her is Camille Francois. She is IGP affiliated faculty. She has also recently been appointed by President Macron as to lead this new landmark commission on information and society. She's a leader and innovator in the area of trust and safety online, having worked with a number of different tech companies, and recently was named a Time 100 Next Gen Leader. This is no joke, this panel here. Next to her is Nina Jankowicz. She's former executive director of the Disinformation Governance Board of the United States. She is author and internationally recognized expert on disinformation and democratization. She recently was named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in AI. And finally, last but certainly not least, Maria Ressa. Maria Ressa is a Nobel Prize-winning journalist. She is co-founder, president, and CEO of Rappler, and an IGP Distinguished Fellow. So welcome to all of you. Maria, I'm going to start with you. Of course, we know that this year is historic, and you've talked about this, you've written about this. Yeah. More people on this planet than ever before in recent history live in countries who have elections. The United States, certainly, but the UK, India, South Africa, Mexico. What will be the impact of tech-enabled violence, disinformation, particularly on women around the elections?
Oh my God, it's so much. Well, first of all, it is so wonderful to see so many friends here. And Secretary Clinton, it's like your ripple is on every panel that is there. I also was in 1995 covering the NGOs at the Beijing Women's Summit. So while Claire was with you, I was on the other end. Look, I think as early as 2021 in the Nobel lecture, I actually pointed out that we have a corrupted information ecosystem. And partly by design, but also despite the impact of these designs, very little has been done to change it. And that was as early as 2016. In the Nobel lecture, I pointed out 2024 was going to be a critical year because this is the tipping point. In almost every country around the world, the kind of decrease, the degradation of democracy, the first step is the attack on women. So gendered disinformation, you know, and you start with the journalists who were there, and this is something, you know, when you're the journalist under attack, it's a curse, but it's also a blessing because you get the data. The data is all yours. And that's part of how we figured out what was happening. And so starting with the journalists, and there's a UNESCO report that came out in 2022 that Julie Passetti had written this report with it, looking at the data. if you look at ground zero in politics, right? So you move from journalists to women activists to women politicians. I'd say Hillary Clinton was pretty much ground zero of attacks. And I think at the very beginning, people didn't pay attention to it because we thought it was the old world. But gender disinformation, information operations, and then when it becomes misinformation, right? So this is a cascade through society. When you seed a meta-narrative, it gains greater strength. If the meta-narrative is that woman is evil, or it's something like Pizzagate. I mean, how crazy, right? And yet people believe it. So this is, I called it a behavior modification system. What does this mean for elections this year? If the tech companies do not do enough, and I think Camille and I have been working on this. We were at the Munich Security Conference with IGP, and despite the best promises they have, they are not doing enough. We still don't have integrity of information. Americans are going to go to the polls at a time when you have less safety measures than you did in 2020, far less than 2016. Do we not know what happened, right? So anyway, let me not go crazy because I am angry.
No, go crazy, go
But,
crazy.
you know, we just have to channel that anger to demand better. We cannot be treated like Pavlov's dogs because of all of the inequality, the power structures you've heard about through all the panels today. They are made worse by this, right? So it's almost, and I would say, you know, it's Freedom House will say democracy has been set back 17 years. For the last 17 years, democracy is slipping. The attacks against journalists have increased almost exponentially year by year for the last decade. And the fact that these are correlated shows you what we have to go through to keep doing our jobs. Of course, in America, you do know that they moved on to women researchers, right? Subpoenas that have gone to women researchers. So where is the Election Integrity Partnership today? Of course, you also know what happened to Nina. Let me toss it back. You nice. I like the purple strain through the through the panel.
Our color.
We got to stand up and demand better.
Maria, yes. Maria, I remember the inspiration that I certainly felt, and I know women around the world felt during the Women's March in the beginning of 2017.
Yes.
It was such a moment of global women's unity, and I thought, wow, this is going to be powerful. But shortly thereafter, we saw this splintering
Yes.
of the organization that put that together, and then a couple of years later, it came out that they were attacked by Russian bots, and I thought, whoa. It isn't just political leaders.
Yeah.
It's also women activists. They are really afraid of us now. Really, I mean, they were afraid.
Yeah.
I should say. Russian bots were afraid.
Well, I mean, in this order, right? Women journalists, women activists, women researchers, and up the top, women politicians. I mean, you know, I don't know if Jacinda Ardern has said this, but she is a leader of a Five Eyes nation. Of course she was targeted. There was a Finnish foreign minister, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, who resigned, and she specifically said it was because of disinformation. All of the things Hillary Clinton has lived through, if you talk to someone outside the United States who don't know the real history, it's fused together. Right? In the same way that the meta-narrative for the annexation of Crimea that was ceded by Russia in 2014, right? So they annexed Crimea with that, was the same meta-narrative used to actually invade Ukraine itself in 2022. These things grow, and I hate to use the word alternative reality, which a White House press secretary said, right? These are not alternative realities, these are lies. And so we need to make the tech companies who are now the new gatekeepers accountable for this, because we're redoing the same exact mistakes we made in AI's first gen, which is social media. We're doing it again with large language models. We are not anchoring those large language models in a knowledge graph that anchors facts. So that's part of the reason it hallucinates. Let me not go into the tech part, because I'm sure we'll talk about it, but women have been pushed back a decade. think about it like that.
Wow. You mentioned Nina, and I want to turn to you next, Nina. Let me just say, we are so excited at Vital Voices, and today we're actually announcing an incredible new partnership with the Institute. We are working together, and with, of course, Camille as well as Maria, on a new piece of research that Nina is leading, really looking at the landscape and where women stand in terms of tech-enabled violence, particularly as we head into this important year. Nina, I would love for you to talk about what some of those initial findings are as you give us the sort of state of play. I know it's not complete yet, but soon. So maybe just give us a little bit of flavor there. But also, Maria mentioned your personal experience, and I think also to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so let me say, first of all, it's such an honor to be here on this stage in this room, and it's also a full circle moment for me because 2 years ago, I was sitting here in this room, and Camille was here, and Julie Picetti was here, and I was massively pregnant, and my second book, How to Be a Woman Online, had just come out a couple days before, and a couple days later, my life blew up because it was announced that I was appointed to lead counter-disinformation efforts within the Department of Homeland Security in the Biden administration, and really massively empowered, well-financed liars went on a campaign to defame me. And because of that, tens of millions of my fellow Americans heard lies about me. Hundreds of thousands of them think that I've committed treason somehow and wanted to censor Americans. And tens of thousands of them then went on to harass and violently threaten me, my unborn child, and my family. We were doxxed. We still deal with death threats to this day, 2 years later. And actually, there was deep fake porn created of me. Actually, Secretary Clinton and I co-star in one of those, which I think is a compliment. But it shows you that men are trying to undermine women who are trying to change the system, right? And it's a full circle moment because I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to still be here. I'm happy to be doing this important research for Vital Voices. And I have to say, things are not good right now. When my co-author, Isabella O'Keefe, who's a PhD student at Cambridge, and I were doing a literature review as part of this paper, we looked at things that Dr. Julie Picetti wrote 8 to 10 years ago, stuff that was being written by NDI at that time. And what we saw was that not only has the policy not changed, but things have gotten measurably worse. Not just in the amount of attacks or the toxicity of the attacks. We now have a tech environment that is enabled by people like Elon Musk, who have rolled back all of the trust and safety measures. Not only have they rolled them back, but they have just completely lost the political will to do content moderation. Content moderation has now become equivalent with censorship, which is just nonsense. And we have this democratized deepfake environment where anybody can take a picture of any of you in this room and very easily put you in pornography or worse. I mean, I don't know what's worse than non-consensual deepfake pornography, but imagine it and they can make it. And spread that around. And it's not just happening to Taylor Swift. It's not just happening to public figures like me. It's happening to ordinary women, and it's happening to young girls in high school and middle school made by their classmates. And no one has done anything about it. And let's not even talk about Congress. They're not passing anything about this as much as they're upset about Taylor Swift, right? It's not just the deep fakes. It is hate speech and targeted harassment that we have normalized in today's political environment. So my kind of top line conclusion from the paper so far, and you'll be able to find this on the IGP website in just a few short weeks, is frankly that we need to mainstream these conversations. I'm really glad that we're all here together as a group of powerful women today, but we need more men. We need to have these conversations not just in feminist and women's groups, but with the tech platforms, with civic tech groups, who are just kind of sidelining this into little women's initiatives, and that's not what we need. We really need to be talking about this as a first order of business for all the reasons that Secretary Raimondo laid out about mainstreaming gender issues earlier today. So that's the main top line finding, and we can go into policy discussions later, but things are bad. And I think particularly with 2 billion people voting this year, they are about to get worse. 2 billion people voting and more women than ever probably running for office. So speak up when you see this stuff happening. Report it to the platforms. They probably won't do anything. Call out that behavior, especially the men in the audience, and maybe we will start to see change.
Report it to us. We can run after them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Camille, speaking of platforms.
Are you ready to represent the entire tech industry, Camille?
Let me first just say that this woman has been the ultimate internal rabble-rouser and advocate within the tech sector, working at some of the biggest companies. And I was thrilled, and my colleagues were thrilled to have the opportunity to meet her at a gathering we hosted last summer. And of course, Nina and Maria were there as well, to bring together tech leaders, women's rights activists. And what is incredible is how many of us had not met before, and how critical it is to work together, and how wonderful the solidarity has been since, including this great partnership. So, Camille.
So my question is, what the
can
tech
the
industry going to do? Right?
do? What should they be doing?
How do we punish the tech industry?
It's a good question. And Alyse, let me start, where you started, which is the tech industry isn't a vibrant space for gender inclusion in leadership. And that is a key reason why we are here. Because at the end of the day, what Maria is talking about, what Nina is talking about is design, right? Platforms that are not designed in a way that centers the safety of their users. And so the first thing that I think we should demand from tech as a sector is to have a better diversity of the people who are leading these companies, designing these products and building these products. And when we do that, we also realize, I think, it's fair to say that leaders in tech safety also happen to be much more diverse than leaders of the tech company. And Nina and I had the pleasure to work on a bunch of projects, but one complicated moment, I think, in that sort of history of Silicon Valley was in 2017, when Silicon Valley had to reckon with the fact that they had completely missed Russia's information operations targeting the US 2016 election. And that really sort of moment of reckoning where a lot of tech companies started saying, like, how did we miss this? And when I think back to the folks who really helped bridge that gap and who are the first voices to say, something's happening and we must not look away. Something's happening, we must document it, we must do something about it, and we should be transparent about it. A lot of these people were women. And I think women play a critical role in keeping these online spaces safe. So we need to first make sure that women too are at the table in the tech industry in Silicon Valley. That's not always the case, and that's not always easy. I'll say the other thing on mainstreaming, and thinking back to what you were saying, a lot of the safety measures that we know work aren't women safety measures. They're not pink buttons and features. They are the thing we need for the internet to be usable. They are the ability to block, to report, to mute. They're the ability to moderate content, their ability to verify and authenticate people so that you can impersonate them so easily. And I think that this idea of just making sure that trust and safety can do its basic job, raise the bar for what it looks like to engage online, is something that, as Nina said right now, is having a difficult moment with teams being downsized and technology not being invested in the way we should. That sounds grim. I feel like you've also turned to me, like, say something nice at the end. I'll say, there is hope. There's hope for our ability to tackle this problem. Everything you said is absolutely true. The problem is worsening. The teams in charge of safety are downsizing. Everything that we documented years ago is still happening. And on top of this, we have definitely added a layer of AI-enabled, atrocious, very easily accessible set of tools that are absolutely being used to target women, including to target girls in schools. But
that's still not positive.
I know. it is also an interesting moment because we have regulatory action, including from Europe. Europe, with the Digital Services Act, is saying, hey, we are going to raise the bar for content moderation. And that has impact outside of Europe too, that has impact on the systems and tools that people are building to meet those new obligations. And AI, while it brings a whole lot of unsavory new behaviors, is also an interesting tool for defenders. Content moderation for many years hasn't been working really well. It's a grueling practice. The tools are not very performing. It's difficult for moderators to be able to do their jobs in a way that's safe and not traumatic. AI is actually helping some of these. I'm not saying you can solve all the AI problems with more AI, but the reality of what we need in order to have safe online spaces is that we are also at a moment of innovation. It's both regulatory innovation, which is a good news, happy to be French in these moments, and tech innovation, where AI is actually also enabling us to maybe have the tools that will scale more easily and make this work more humane and more effective. So some hope, which we're working on at IGP.
Excellent. Rachel, I know that this has been a key issue for the Biden administration and really feeling like how can you have democracy if you aren't safe online and communicating and connecting. Talk a little bit about why that is, particularly when it comes to women.
Well, let me start by thanking the Institute for Global Politics for hosting this important dialogue, and it's really terrific to be here with my co-panelists, and I want to salute their courage and determination, which are really an inspiration to all of us. So I would say there are really three things to know about the administration's commitment to addressing gender-based online harassment and abuse. And the first is that the commitment really comes from the president himself. We all know he's long championed the cause of combating gender-based violence, sponsoring the Violence Against Women Act that was signed back in the 1990s. But in recent years, he's really talked a lot about this 21st century manifestation of gender-based violence. And when he was running for office, when he was campaigning, he pledged to create the first national task force on this issue, and that's a pledge that he has fulfilled. So it really comes from the top. The second thing to know about the administration's commitment is that, as you said, this is an issue of democracy. It's certainly rooted in our national strategy on gender equity and equality, but it's also been core to our efforts to protect and support democracy both at home and abroad. And we've heard some of the harms that folks up here and so many others have experienced, targeted harassment and abuse, gender disinformation, and that these are harms that are particularly targeted at women leaders, at women activists, at women journalists. So that is why back when President Biden first convened the Summit for Democracy in the beginning of the administration in 2021, he pledged there to form the first ever global partnership to combat gender-based online harassment and abuse. And he did that to make clear that it's part of our democracy protection and promotion efforts. The third thing I think that makes our work on this different is that we are focused on this issue both at home and abroad, so both through our domestic policy and our foreign policy. And we recognize that the stakes are high here in the US, with 1 in 3 women under the age of 35 citing experiences with sexual harassment and stalking online. But we know this is a borderless problem. And so that is why it's been really important to work in collaboration with other nations and with partners around the world. So here at home, the White House Task Force on Online Harassment and Abuse was established in 2022 with a clear mandate for federal agencies to develop concrete actions to address this problem. And so we've seen some fruits from that effort. For example, the Department of Justice last fall established our nation's first ever national helpline, providing support to survivors of image-based abuse, which is new. We also saw the issuance of an executive order by President Biden on artificial intelligence, which includes provisions that explicitly focus on gender-based violence and gendered manifestations. So for example, the executive order takes steps to address image-based sexual abuse that's AI generated, requiring the government to implement methods to detect it and to label AI manipulated content, for example. And we are pairing those domestic efforts with the work that we're doing globally. So for example, we've worked with New Zealand, a member of the Global Partnership, to introduce a gender-based hate and harassment pillar of the Christchurch Call to Action, which is focused on combating online radicalization. And later this month, with the governments of the UK and Kenya, the US is going to host the first of its kind conference on gender disinformation in Nairobi, bringing together experts to create a model playbook for how we handle these issues in the context of elections. And I'm really pleased that Nina has been recruited to help develop this tool. So we know that there's great potential to lift up the voices and leadership of women online, but it's only if we get at some of these grave challenges that we're going to be able to accomplish that.
Thank you. Just quickly, because I know we've got to close, I just want to go, maybe Maria, we'll start with you, and then just down the line. What is an action that people in this room can take, or call on leaders of their countries or communities to take, or corporations? And also, or, you can answer either or, what's working? Is there anything good for us?
Actually, I do have good news, and that's rare when Camille and I are talking. You know, so if you look like on my X account, because I'm getting off X soon, but you will see I just tweeted something. A Russian scam network did a deep fake of me selling crypto on Facebook, and they did ads on Microsoft's Bing, right? So, but what you'll see there is exactly how it works, right? Things that were used for business, scams, are now being used for information warfare, information operations. These are targeting women, and the first goal is to tear down your credibility, right? So that continues. I'll do the bad, two more bad. The second, because then I'll leave you with something that does work, right? But it is at the very beginning stages of it. The second is that the DSA is out. The Digital Services Act is out. It was like a few Fridays ago where it was fully implemented. But, you know, essentially large language models leapfrogged over it. Right? And I'm testifying in a day, tomorrow, or at the European Council and then the European Parliament. And what I am asking for is something you should be asking for, which is data, data, data. Did you give permission to be cloned, right? Did you give permission to be Pavlov's dog? None of us did. And then, so as I say, the bad is going to get worse. Here's what's working. Because part of what, again, if we're the first group that is attacked, at some point you stop being a punching bag and you begin looking for what to do. And what we decided in Rappler is about 130 journalists. We now beat the top 2 television stations in terms of our online reach in the Philippines. But here's what we did. I've given up on big tech. Because starting January this year, big tech literally is choking traffic to news sites. This is Meta, right? So when you walk into elections, you're not going to get that news distributed to you the same way you will be targeted by information operations. So starting January last year, it's anywhere down from 50 to 85, 87%. I think it was The Guardian that said they were over 75%. So that's one. The second is search generative experience of Google. Right? There are only 3 ways a news site gets traffic: direct, social, or search. Search generative experience is now going to tell you, take all of our stuff and then give it to you, but without giving you a link back to all of our sites. So I'm still giving you bad news, right? So what we did, and here's the good news, what we did is I was just trying to figure out, so what is the future of news? Check out Matrix Protocol. What we did over the last year was spent our money, despite being under attack, to build a Matrix Protocol chat app. It is a federated experience, and normally the friction is too high for people to use it. But we figured out how to build it so that it is directly connected to the login page of a news site. What does that mean? That means you here in IGP, if you are a member of IGP's federated channel, you can connect to me in the Philippines. It is one, except it's a site that will not manipulate you, that has standards and ethics of journalism. This is our vision. We need to have a vision now because I kept saying democracy will die in 2024 if we don't do anything. I love policy, but this is the time to move. So the last thing is, get up off your chairs, get your family and friends, right? Socialnomics said we believe our family and friends, and organize in the real world. Because if you don't, we will lose our rights. I can't believe a journalist said organize, so sorry.
All right, so just a rapid fire, try and keep it positive.
Sorry.
All right, well, we know things that work, right? We have studies on things like adding friction and pop-ups to social media sites that work, and that's all been rolled back. So let's pressure the tech companies to put that stuff back. Let's pressure Google to de-index the deepfake porn sites that are cropping up. The reason I found out about the deepfake porn about me is because I got a Google alert about it. Like, that is insane. And you shouldn't be able to Google Nina Jankowicz deepfake porn and find things. That's crazy. Let's pressure Google. And let's make Congress care about women. It would be really easy to criminalize deepfake porn creation and amplification.
Yes.
Why haven't they done it? Because they don't care. And I wonder if we put some guys in some deepfake porn, if they would start caring. Those are my three things that would be really easy.
Only
I
if
have
they look
lots
bad.
more. There will be more. There will be more in our paper, which is out end of April, early May.
And your case.
Oh yes, I'm also suing Fox News.
Camille?
See?
All of that, including strategic litigation. But adding to this, I think at those pivotal moments where suddenly we're not really sure what's going on safety issues, this is really where we need independent, rigorous academic research. A lot of the narrative on what's happening on the platforms and what's happening on questions of safety have been driven by the platforms themselves.
Yes.
A lot of the data we don't have access to, a lot of the research has come from the platforms themselves, and it's an important pivotal moment where I think we really need universities here and independent and rigorous research to be able to play the role that it can play. So that's the first thing, and then you said rapid fire. The second thing, Maria, you touched on that.
Only because I'm getting the motion over here.
You touched on that. The tech ecosystem we have right now is definitely not the one we deserve. It's also not the one we're locked in. They are alternative architectures, there are alternative business models. At IGP, we're looking into ensuring that open source AI can also play a role in creating a more diverse set of online spaces. We don't have to live in a monoculture of platforms that are ruled in bizarre and sometimes deranged ways. And so making sure that we have those alternatives, including that we can push for policy and technological solutions that continue enabling these alternative spaces, I think is also really important. We don't have to be locked in on X. I can't believe you send people to X.
Sorry.
All good.
But antitrust, Lina Khan is leading this, right? Sorry.
Well, President Biden and Vice President Harris have been very clear that laws and regulations to increase accountability are urgently needed, and they've outlined a series of principles for legal reform. But in the meantime, we are acting now, and our call to action is to join us in a partnership to fund some of those innovative solutions. And at the UN Commission on the Status of Women next week, we'll be convening a high-level meeting of leaders from governments, from private sector, from multilateral organizations, from civil society, to hash out the terms of a partnership. And we really have three goals. The first is to invest and build the pipeline of women leaders. The second is to address barriers to women's political participation and leadership in public life by addressing barriers like technology-facilitated gender-based violence. And then third, we aim to create a community of practice to bring leaders who are working on these issues, organizations that are working on these issues together, and to think about how to invest and support innovative approaches. So we're joining forces with the Women Political Leaders Fund, a new fund, $25 million fund that was just established, that's led by Suyan Barahona, a Nicaraguan activist who was incarcerated for her leadership and her advocacy for democracy, and who has faced relentless online harassment and abuse. We'll be working together with her and with so many others. So our call to action is join us, and let's work together to address this issue.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for your work. I have to say, when we gathered last summer and we had this global dialogue on this very issue, day one I was like, oh, it's worse than I thought it was. But by day two, I think what was so inspiring is that you could see the solutions, and to have these phenomenal, brilliant women all committed to it across sectors, putting any differences aside and finding opportunities to work together. So we will all stay tuned for the forthcoming State of Play research coming out of the IGP website and beyond, and hope to facilitate many more conversations like this as a result. Thank you all for your work. Safe travels, Maria.